Hello, students. So last class we saw the question and answers that can come from the chapter 1, from the beginning of the time. Now we will do with chapter 2. So one thing I want to let you all know is you all don't have to sit and write these notes. I'm sure you must have jotted down some notes while my explanation. Just add whatever is required or missed. Also, you can mark them in your textbooks. You don't need to sit and write them down. You can just make sure you have all the points you need to learn for your examination. Okay, so we will discuss the chapter 2 again today. So today we are going to do the notes of chapter 2, that was writing and city life. So we learned about Mesopotamia, but there are many names by which the same civilization is called. Mesopotamia is derived from the Greek word mesos, which means middle, and potamos, which means river. Mesopotamia means the land between the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. Then there is Sumerian civilization. It is the first known language of Mesopotamia, which is Sumerian. And this is why the civilization is also called Sumerian civilization. Next is Babylonian civilization. Sorry, yeah. After 2000 BCE, when Babylon became an important city of this civilization, it was also called Babylonian civilization. Then it's also called as Akkadian civilization. At around 24,000 BCE, when Akkadian speakers arrived and established their rule in the southern part of Mesopotamia, it was called as Akkadian civilization. The Assyrian civilization, when Assyrian speakers arrived and established their rule in the southern part of Mesopotamia, it was called as Assyrian civilization. Which are the major features of Mesopotamian civilization? Now, Mesopotamian civilization is known for its prosperity, city life, voluminous and rich literature, its mathematics, and astronomy. The Mesopotamia's writing system and literature has spread to the eastern Mediterranean, northern Syria, and Turkey. Which are the sources that help us understand the Mesopotamian civilization? We have studied hundreds of Mesopotamian buildings, statues, ornaments, graves, tools, and seals, which are all the sources that help us to understand the Mesopotamian civilization. There are also hundreds of written documents which we can study and understand Mesopotamian civilization. Now, Mesopotamia and its geography. Mesopotamia is a land of diverse environments. In the northeast lies green, undulating plains there's a gradually rising tea-covered mountain ranges with clear streams and wild flowers and enough rainfall to grow crops. In the north, there's a stretch of upland called a steppe. Steppe is where animal herds, so animal herding offer people a better livelihood than agriculture. And after the winter rains, sheep and goats feed on the grasses and low shrubs that grow in this northern part. In the east, the tributaries of Tigris provide routes of communication into the mountains of Iran. To the south, there's the desert, and this is where the first cities and writing has emerged. This desert could support cities because of two rivers, Euphrates and Tigris. These rivers rise in the northern mountains and they carry loads of silt. And when these rivers flood or when their water is let out onto the field, this silt is deposited, making the soil very fertile. Not only agriculture, Mesopotamian sheep and goats grazed on the steppe. The northeastern plains and mountain slopes produced meat, milk, and wool in abundance. Fish was available in rivers, and date palms gave fruit in summer. The significance of urbanism in Mesopotamia. The urban centers, they involve in various economic activities such as food production, trade, manufacturing, and services. So city people, they cease to be self-sufficient and they depend on the products or services of other people. And there is continuous interaction amongst them. For an example, a stone carver requires seals. A carver of stone seals requires bronze tools that he himself cannot make. He also requires colored stones for the seals, and he doesn't know where to get it from. So he depends on others for his needs. The division of labor is a mark of urban life. There must be a social organization in cities. Fuel, metal, various stones, wood, etc. come from many different places for city manufacturers. Thus, organized trade, storage, delivery of grains, and other food items from the village to the city were controlled and supervised by the rulers. Now, Mesopotamia was very rich in food resources, but their mineral resources were very, very few. The most part of the south lacked stones that were required for tools, jewelry that are required for seals, wood that were required for carts, cart wheels or boats. So there was no metal for tools or vessels or ornaments. So Mesopotamians traded their abundant textiles and agricultural produce for wood, copper, tin, silver, gold, shell, and various stones from Turkey and Iran or across the Gulf. Now, regular exchange was only possible when there was a social organization so that foreign expectations and exchange of goods could happen. But besides them, besides craft, trade, and services, efficient transport is also important for urban development so that we can carry grains and products into the cities. So, for this transport, animal packs were used. The cheapest mode of transport at that time was over water because river boats were loaded with grains and the current of the river propelled the boat. The canals and the natural channels of ancient Mesopotamia were routes of good transport between large and small settlements. Now, all societies, now we look how did writing develop in Mesopotamia. So all societies have a language in which spoken sounds are convey certain meaning. This is called verbal communication. Writing too is a form of verbal communication, but in a different way. The first Mesopotamian tablets were written around 32,000 BCE, and it contained picture-like signs and numbers. There were about 5,000 lists of oxen, fish, bread, loaves, etc. And these lists of goods that were brought into or they were distributed from the temples of Uruk. Mesopotamians wrote on a tablet of clay. A scribe would wet the clay and pat it into a size he could hold comfortably in one hand. He would carefully smoothen its surface with the sharp edge, that is end of a reed, and he would press the wedge-shaped cuneiform signs onto the smoothened surface while it was still moist. Once dried in the sun, the clay tablet would harden and the tablets would be almost as indestructible as pottery. Once the surface dried, signs could not be pressed into the tablet, and so every transaction, no matter how big or small it was, required a different tablet. By 2600 BCE, the letters became cuneiform and the language was Sumerian. Now, writing was not only used for keeping records, but it was also used to make dictionaries, give legal validity to land transfers, narrate the deed of kings, and announce the changes a king made in a customary law of land. Sumerian is the earliest known language of Mesopotamia, and it was gradually replaced after 2400 BCE by the Akkadian language. Cuneiform writing in the Akkadian language continued, and it was in use until the 1st century Common Era. How was the system of writing in cuneiform? Cuneiform sign did not represent a single consonant or vowel, but it represented a syllable, a group of syllables. So the signs in a Mesopotamian scribe had to learn was hundreds and thousands, and he had to be able to handle a wet tablet and write on that tablet before it dried. And so writing was a skilled craft. It was also an enormous intellectual achievement, conveying in the visual form the sounds of the system of sounds of a particular language. Literacy in Mesopotamia is that very few people could write and read. Not only there were signs to learn, but there were many signs to learn, but most of them were also very complex. So most part writing only reflected the mode of speaking, that is, A said this and B replied that, and A said this and B replied that. This is the most important use of writing in those days. The earliest cities emerged around the temples. Some cities developed as centers of trade, and some were imperial cities. Now, early settlers began to build and rebuild temples at selected spots in their villages. The earliest known temple was a small shrine made of unbaked bricks. These temples were the residences of the various gods: moon god, sun god, or goddesses, love, and war. The temples became larger over time, with several rooms around open courtyards. Some of the early ones were possibly not like the ordinary houses built, but temples always had their outer walls going in and out at regular intervals. So that is how it was different from ordinary houses. The god was the main focus of worship. So people would bring grain, curd, fish, etc. And the god was also theoretically owner of all the agricultural fields. Also the fisheries and herds of local community. Production processes such as oil pressing, grain grinding, spinning, and the weaving of wooden cloth were done in the temple. The temple gradually developed its activities and it became the main urban institution by organizing production, employing merchants, and keeping written records of distribution and allotment of grain, plowing animals, bread, beer, and fish. Uh, Role of kings in construction and maintenance of temples in Mesopotamia. The archaeological records show that the villages were periodically relocated because of the flood in the river and change in the course of the river. There was man-made problem also that all those who lived on the upstream, they would divert water into their own fields, and so the people of the village living downstream did not have enough water. When there was continuous warfare in a region, the chief who had been successful in the war, he would get lots of followers and he would distribute food amongst them, and he would take the prisoners from the defeated groups and give them some work, like make them a guard or let them work in the temple or something. Victorious chief began to offer precious booty to the gods, and so beautification of the temple of the community temples began. Now they would send men out to bring fine stones and metal for the benefit of god and community, and they would organize the distribution of temple wealth in an efficient way by accounting for things that came in and went out. War captives and local people were put to work for the temple or directly for the ruler. Agricultural tax was compulsory. All those who were put to work were paid rations. In fact, there is a record that one of the temples took 1,500 men working 10 hours a day, and then it took 5 years to build that temple. Rulers asked people to fetch him stones or metal ores, and they would ask them to, rulers kept also told the people to lay the bricks for the temple or go to distant countries to fetch suitable material. So hundreds of people were put to work at making or baking clay cones that are used to push into the temple walls. They're painted in different colors and they create a colorful mosaic. Now we'll also see the life in the city of Ur. In Mesopotamia, the family system was nuclear. The married son and his family normally lived with their parents, but the father was considered the head of the family. We have very little information about the procedures of marriage. A declaration was made about the willingness to marry by a bride's parents, And when the wedding took place, gifts were exchanged by both the parties, and they ate together and they made offering at a temple. Ur was one of the earliest cities that has been excavated in Mesopotamia. The narrow, winding streets they indicate that the wheeled carts could have not reached many houses. So possibly the grains and firewood would have arrived on donkey back. Also, there was no town planning because there are narrow streets and irregular shapes of house plots. There were no street drains also, and uh, instead we have found uh, inner courtyards of the house. They had a. It is thought that the roofs, all the house roofs were sloping inwards, and the rainwater was channelized via drain pipes into sumps. Sumps are something that was in the inner courts. Still, people have thrown all their household refuses into the street. Okay, and this made the street levels rise. So over time, the thresholds of the houses also had to be raised so that the mud would not flow inside the house after the rain. The light came into the rooms not from windows but from doorways opening into the courtyards so that the family were given their privacy. Uh, there's also superstition about the houses that higher threshold would bring more wealth. A front door that did not have a house opened outwards, the wife would torment her husband. These are all the superstitions. And there was a town cemetery at Ur in which the graves of royalty and commoners have been found. A few individuals were found buried under the floors also, floor of their ordinary houses. And the dead bodies of royal family were buried with jewelry, gold, musical instruments, white shells, and ceremonial daggers of gold, etc. Okay, so with this, right now, I'm ending this class. We have a little more left, so we'll continue this next class. So till then, you can stay home, stay safe, continue drawing your timelines. And there were some questions given. Hopefully, you have found answers in today's session for those. If not, you can wait for tomorrow's session and the answers will be there. So stay home, stay safe, take care, and keep learning.